The envelope yellowed with age trembled in Sam Morrison's weathered hands as he stared at the return address, his world tilting on its axis. 3 months after burying Sarah, his wife of 20 years, the demons of doubt were already gnawing at the foundations of their shared memories. The afternoon light filtering through his study window cast long shadows across the mahogany desk where he'd spent countless nights managing their family's finances since her passing. "Dad?" Lizzie's voice cracked as she stood in the doorway, her mother's high school yearbook clutched against her chest like a shield. At 16, she was Sarah's mirror image, same honey blonde hair, same questioning green eyes that could pierce through any facade. "I found something else while cleaning out Mom's closet." Sam's throat tightened. The past week had been a maze of discoveries, each more unsettling than the last. First, it was the mysterious bank statements. Then came the letters addressed to someone named Marcus, never sent, hidden in a shoebox beneath old winter sweaters. Now, his daughter's trembling hands held what looked like official documents. "What is it, sweetheart?" He forced his voice to remain steady, though his heart hammered against his ribs. The setting sun painted their living room in shades of amber, a cruel reminder of how Sarah used to love this time of day. Lizzie crossed the room slowly, her sock-clad feet silent on the hardwood floors. It's a marriage certificate, Dad. From before you and Mom got married." She placed the document on his desk, her fingers lingering on its edges. "There's more." The words on the page swam before Sam's eyes, Sarah Elizabeth Chen, his Sarah, but with her maiden name, and James Patrick Sullivan. The date stamped at the bottom was from 2 years before he'd met her. His hands began to shake. "I know Mom wouldn't want us going through her things like this," Lizzie whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "But since she left us, everything feels different. Like we never really knew her at all." Sam stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. The weight of their mounting bills, the mortgage payments he was struggling to meet on a single income, the college funds he feared would never materialize, all of it momentarily forgotten in the face of this new revelation. "Your mother loved us, Lizzie," he said firmly, even as doubt clouded his mind. "Whatever this is, whatever we find, that doesn't change." But his daughter's next words shattered what remained of his certainty. "There's a birth certificate too, Dad. From that time. A baby boy." The room seemed to spin as Sam sank back into his chair. 20 years of marriage, 3 children together, Tommy, Lizzie, and little Grace, and now this? A previous marriage he'd never known about, a child whose existence Sarah had never mentioned. "Does Karen know about this?" he asked, referring to Sarah's best friend, the woman who'd been by their side through everything, who'd held their family together during Sarah's final days battling cancer. Lizzie shook her head, hugging herself tightly. "I haven't told anyone. I needed you to know first." Sam stared at the document spread across his desk, his mind racing through years of memories, searching for clues he might have missed. Sarah's occasional distant looks, her unexplained absences every April, the way she'd sometimes wake up crying from dreams she refused to discuss. "We need to know the truth," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "For all of us." Lizzie's face crumpled. "But what if the truth ruins everything we thought we knew about her? About our family?" Outside, the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, plunging the study into shadows. Sam reached for his daughter's hand, finding it cold and trembling. "Some truths hurt, sweetheart. But lies." He swallowed hard. "Lies can destroy us from the inside out." As they sat there in the growing darkness, neither spoke of the other papers Lizzie had found, the ones that hinted at why Sarah had left her first husband, why she'd changed her name, why she'd never spoken of that part of her life. Some secrets, Sam realized, were buried deeper than others. And as he held his daughter's hand, he wondered if they were ready for what they might uncover. The sound of Tommy's basketball bouncing in the driveway startled them both. Grace's high-pitched laughter followed, a reminder of the innocent lives that would be affected by whatever they discovered. Sam squeezed Lizzie's hand one last time before releasing it. "We'll figure this out together," he promised, though uncertainty gnawed at his gut. "But for now, let's keep this between us. Your siblings, they're not ready." Lizzie nodded, gathering the documents with shaking hands. As she turned to leave, she paused in the doorway. "Dad? Do you think he's still out there somewhere? My brother?" The question hung in the air like smoke, impossible to grasp yet impossible to ignore. Sam looked at his daughter, seeing both strength and fear in her eyes. "I don't know, Lizzie. But I have a feeling we're going to find out." She left him alone in the darkened study, where the ghosts of his past, and Sarah's, seemed to whisper from every shadow. Tomorrow, he would begin his search for answers. Tonight, he would sit with his grief, his anger, and his fear, wondering if the woman he'd loved for 20 years had ever truly existed at all. The manila envelope felt heavy in Sam's hands as he sat in his car outside Karen's suburban home. 3 days of sleepless nights had led him here, to Sarah's closest friend, the one person who might hold the keys to his wife's hidden past. The morning sun glinted off pristine windows, casting shadows across carefully tended flower beds. Sarah and Karen had planted those roses together just last spring. Inside the envelope were the documents that had shattered his world, the marriage certificate, the birth record, and something else he'd discovered while searching through Sarah's old files, a restraining order against James Sullivan, dated 6 months before their divorce. The front door opened before he could reach for it. Karen stood there, her usually perfectly styled hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd been sleeping as poorly as he had. "I saw you sitting out there," she said softly. "Come in, Sam. We need to talk." Her kitchen was exactly as he remembered from countless family dinners: warm yellow walls, copper pots hanging above the island, the subtle scent of coffee and cinnamon. But today, the familiarity felt like a betrayal. "How long have you known?" he asked, spreading the documents across her granite countertop. Karen's hands trembled as she poured coffee into 2 mugs. "Since before your wedding." She wouldn't meet his eyes. "I was there when she left him, Sam. I helped her escape." The word escape hit him like a physical blow. Escape what? James Sullivan wasn't just Sarah's first husband. Karen's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He was her nightmare. The man she married right out of college turned out to be. She paused, swallowing hard. He was dangerous, Sam. Controlling. Violent. Sam's coffee grew cold as Karen told him everything: how Sarah had met James in college, how the charm had turned to control, how the control had turned to violence. How she discovered she was pregnant just as things were getting worse. She had the baby in secret, Karen continued, tears streaming down her face. Named him Marcus, after her grandfather. But James, he threatened to take the baby, to use him to control her forever. She knew she had to get out. So she gave up her own child. Sam's voice cracked with disbelief. Karen shook her head fiercely. She didn't give him up, she protected him. Found a loving family through an adoption agency, made sure James could never find him. It nearly destroyed her, Sam. But she did what she had to do to keep her son safe. The pieces started falling into place: Sarah's passionate involvement in domestic violence charities, her insistence on teaching their daughters about independence and self-worth, the way she'd sometimes wake up crying from nightmares she refused to discuss. Why didn't she tell me? The question came out raw, haunted. Because James made threats, even after the divorce. Said if she ever told anyone about their marriage, about Marcus, he'd find them both. She changed her name, moved cities, started over. Meeting you, it was her chance at a new life, a safe life. Karen reached across the counter, gripping his hand. She wanted to tell you, Sam. So many times. But the fear. Is he still out there? James? Last I heard, he was in prison. Assault charges, about 10 years ago. Karen's expression darkened. But he'll be out soon. Sam's blood ran cold. And Marcus? I don't know. Sarah had a private investigator keep tabs on him from a distance, make sure he was safe and happy. But she never interfered, never risked James finding out where he was. Karen pulled a small key from her pocket. There's a storage unit. Sarah kept everything there, every photo she could get, every report about his life. She made me promise to tell you about it, if anything ever happened to her. The weight of Sarah's secret pressed against Sam's chest like a stone. All those years, she'd carried this burden alone, protecting their family while mourning a child she'd had to give up. Lizzie found the documents, he said quietly. She knows she has a brother out there. Karen's face paled. Sam, you need to be careful. Marcus isn't just Sarah's secret, he's her sacrifice. Finding him now could stir up things better left buried. He's family, Sam said firmly. Sarah's son. My children's brother. And James Sullivan's son too, Karen reminded him gently. Just, promise me you'll be careful. Sarah spent her whole life protecting both her families. Don't let that be in vain. As Sam drove home, the storage unit key burning a hole in his pocket, Karen's words echoed in his mind. The truth about Sarah wasn't just about a hidden marriage or a secret child, it was about courage, sacrifice, and a mother's desperate choice to protect those she loved. His phone buzzed with a text from Lizzie. Did Karen tell you anything? Sam stared at the message, his throat tight. How could he tell his daughter that her mother's past was both darker and more heroic than any of them had imagined? That the brother she discovered might be better left unfound? The storage unit waited across town, holding 20 years of Sarah's secret heartbreak. Inside his breast pocket, the restraining order seemed to pulse like a living thing, a warning from the past about the price of truth. Tonight, he would have to choose, between honoring Sarah's sacrifice and pursuing the truth his children deserved to know. Between protecting his family's peace and uncovering a brother who might not want to be found. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number, but the message made his blood freeze. Hello, Sam. We need to talk about Sarah. The storage unit door groaned open, releasing the musty scent of contained memories. Sam stood in the narrow entrance, flashlight beam cutting through decades of carefully preserved secrets. Behind him, Lizzie's breath caught as the light revealed dozens of neatly labeled boxes, each one a chapter of their mother's hidden life. Dad? Lizzie's voice wavered. Are you sure we should be here? Sam's hand trembled as he reached for the nearest box. The label read, Marcus, age 5, in Sarah's elegant handwriting. Your mother wanted us to know, eventually. Karen said as much. They worked in silence, carefully opening boxes that tracked a parallel life, one filled with school photos taken from a distance, report cards obtained through careful investigation, newspaper clippings of academic achievements and sports victories. A life Sarah had watched from afar, protecting her firstborn the only way she could. Look at this, Lizzie whispered, holding up a photograph. A young boy with Sarah's eyes smiled at the camera, proudly displaying a science fair ribbon. He looks just like Tommy did at that age. Sam's throat tightened. In another box, he found Sarah's journal, its pages filled with letters never sent. My dearest Marcus, one began, today you graduated elementary school. I watched from the back row, pretending to be someone else's parent. Your smile lit up the whole auditorium. I hope someday you'll understand why I had to leave, why keeping you safe meant letting you go. The mysterious text message burned in Sam's pocket like a live coal. He hadn't told Lizzie about it yet, couldn't bring himself to add another layer of worry to her already heavy heart. She was so alone, Lizzie said softly, running her fingers over a tear-stained page. All those years, carrying this by herself. Not completely alone, Sam corrected gently. She had Karen. And she had us, even if we didn't know we were helping her heal. A shoebox at the bottom of one container held newspaper clippings about James Sullivan's arrest. The headlines painted a brutal picture: multiple assault charges, stalking allegations from subsequent relationships, a pattern of violence that validated every choice Sarah had made. That's why she was so adamant about my self-defense classes, Lizzie realized, her voice breaking. Why she always said being strong meant knowing when to ask for help. Sam wrapped an arm around his daughter's shoulders, remembering how Sarah had transformed their home into a fortress of love and security. Every family dinner, every bedtime story, every tradition she created had been an act of defiance against the darkness of her past. "I found him, Dad," Lizzie whispered suddenly, holding up a printout from a community college website. "Marcus. He's teaching chemistry in Seattle. There's an email address." Before Sam could respond, his phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. The storage unit was just the beginning, Sam. Sarah left something else for Marcus. Something James would kill to get his hands on. Sam's hands shook as he showed Lizzie the messages. Her face paled, but her jaw set in a determined line that was pure Sarah. "We can't back down now, Dad. Mom protected Marcus his whole life. Now it's our turn." Together, they discovered a sealed envelope tucked into the frame of Marcus's college graduation photo. Inside was a USB drive and a letter in Sarah's handwriting, dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest family. If you're reading this, it means you've discovered the truth I fought so hard to protect. The drive contains evidence, bank records, emails, photographs, everything I collected over the years to keep Marcus safe from James. I never wanted to leave you with this burden, but I trust you'll know what to do with it. Marcus deserves to know his story, but more importantly, he deserves to be safe. The drive is encoded, only someone with Morrison family DNA can unlock it. It was my final safeguard. Sam, my love, I'm sorry for every secret I kept. But I'm not sorry for protecting our children, all of our children. The strength I found in your love gave me the courage to build this archive, to keep watching over Marcus even when it broke my heart. Lizzie, my brave girl, you have my heart and my spirit. Trust them both. All my love. Sarah." Sam held his daughter as she cried, their shadows stretching long across the concrete floor. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Sarah's favorite time of day. His phone buzzed one final time. "Time's running out, Sam. James gets released next week. Does Marcus know what's coming?" In the gathering darkness, Sam made a decision. Sarah had spent 20 years documenting a love story, not the kind that ended with happily ever after, but the kind that proved love could survive anything, even impossible choices. "We need to go to Seattle," he said quietly. Lizzie nodded, gathering the most crucial boxes. Together, she agreed. Neither of them noticed the dark sedan parked across the street, or the man inside making a phone call. "They found it," he said tersely. "Everything Sarah Morrison collected against you. They're going to the boy." A harsh laugh crackled through the speaker. "Perfect. Let them lead us right to him." The Seattle rain fell in gentle sheets as Sam stood before the community college's chemistry building, Sarah's last letter pressed against his heart. Through the window, he could see Marcus Parker, no longer the boy from the photographs, but a man with Sarah's gentle eyes and determined stance, explaining molecular structures to an attentive class. "He looks so much like her," Lizzie whispered, squeezing his hand. They'd left Tommy and Grace with Karen, telling them only that they needed to handle some of Mom's unfinished business. Another necessary lie in a web of protection Sarah had woven so carefully. The class filed out, students chattering about upcoming exams. Marcus stayed behind, erasing complex formulas from the whiteboard with measured strokes. Each movement echoed Sarah's methodical nature, the careful precision she'd applied to everything from cooking family dinners to documenting her secret son's life. Sam's hands trembled as he knocked on the classroom door. "Professor Parker. Do you have a moment?" Marcus turned, his expression politely curious. "Office hours aren't until Thursday, but I can spare a few minutes." "Are you a student's parent?" "Not exactly." Sam's voice caught. "How do you tell a stranger that his entire life was built on a foundation of both love and necessary deception?" "I'm here about Sarah Chen. You might not know that name, but—" The dry erase marker clattered to the floor. Marcus's face drained of color, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "Get out," he whispered, then louder, "Get out." "Please," Lizzie stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. "We're not here to hurt you. We're your family." "Family?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "I was abandoned. Left in the system until the Parkers took me in. I don't have a family." Sam pulled out the file they'd assembled from Sarah's archive, photographs, letters, medical records. "Your mother never abandoned you. She saved you. And now we need to save you again." For 3 hours, they sat in Marcus's classroom as the rain drummed against the windows. Sam watched his wife's firstborn son absorb 2 decades of hidden truth, the violence she'd fled, the sacrifice she'd made, the silent vigil she'd kept over his life. "She came to my graduation," Marcus said softly, touching a photo of himself receiving his Ph.D. In the background, partially hidden behind a column, stood Sarah. "I remember feeling someone watching me. I thought I was imagining things." "She was so proud of you," Lizzie told him, their mother's journal open between them. Every achievement, every milestone, she celebrated them all, just from a distance. "Why now?" Marcus asked, his voice raw. "Why tell me all this after she's gone?" Sam showed him the threatening texts, explained about James's imminent release. "Your mother spent 20 years building a case against him, gathering evidence of his continued pattern of violence. She encoded it all to your DNA, her final gift of protection." Marcus ran his fingers over Sarah's handwriting, tracing the words she'd written to him but never sent. "The Parkers, my adoptive parents, they died in a car accident 5 years ago. I thought I was alone in the world." "You're not alone," Lizzie said fiercely. "You have us. A brother, 2 sisters, a father who's ready to protect you just like Mom did. And a target on my back," Marcus added quietly. "If what you're saying is true, this James person, my biological father, he's coming for me. For this evidence." Sam's phone buzzed, "Found him. Did you really think Sarah could hide him forever?" "We need to move," Sam said urgently, showing Marcus the message. "We have a safe place set up. Karen's been working with Sarah's old domestic violence advocacy contacts." Marcus stared at the text, then at the years of love documented in Sarah's meticulous records. "I have a clinical trial starting tomorrow. Students depending on me. I can't just disappear." "Mom sacrificed everything to give you a normal life," Lizzie pleaded. "Don't sacrifice that life now out of pride." The sound of footsteps in the hallway made them all freeze. Through the glass panel in the door, a shadow moved closer. Marcus looked at the evidence of his mother's love spread across his desk, then at the sister he'd never known he had, and the stepfather who'd crossed the country to protect him. "What do we do?" he whispered. Sam gathered Sarah's documents with shaking hands, but his voice was steady. "We do what your mother did. We protect our family. Together." The doorknob began to turn. The campus security guard's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating their startled faces. "Professor Parker. Everything all right? Your car's been in the lot past hours." The collective release of breath was almost audible. Marcus found his voice first. "Yes, John. Just wrapping up some family matters." "Family matters." The words hung in the air as they gathered Sarah's carefully preserved history, her decades of silent love captured in photographs and letters. Outside, the Seattle rain had softened to a gentle mist, nature's quiet reminder that even storms eventually pass. In Marcus's small apartment 20 minutes later, Sam watched his newfound son move through his space with the same precise grace Sarah had possessed. Every beaker and book was meticulously placed, each surface spotless, the attention to detail of someone who'd learned early that control of one's environment could be a form of protection. "The Parkers," Marcus said quietly, placing 3 mugs of tea on his coffee table, "they never told me I was adopted. I found out by accident, going through their papers after the accident." He touched a framed photo of an older couple with kind eyes. "They were good people. They gave me everything: love, education, safety. Finding out I was adopted, it felt like losing them all over again." Lizzie curled up in an armchair, looking so much like Sarah that Sam's heart ached. "Mom chose them specifically," she said, opening one of the journals. "She interviewed dozens of families through the agency, researched their backgrounds. The Parkers had a history of working with at-risk youth. They understood trauma, knew how to create safe spaces. Nothing about my childhood felt traumatic," Marcus mused, stirring his tea. "I was loved, supported, encouraged. I never knew I was being protected from something. Someone." Sam pulled out Sarah's final letter. "Your mother made sure of that. Every decision, every sacrifice, it was all to give you a life unmarked by fear." He hesitated, then added, "The same fear she fought every day to keep from infecting our family's life." Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the letter. "I thought, all these years, I thought she didn't want me. That I wasn't enough to make her stay." His voice cracked. "But she never really left, did she?" "No," Lizzie whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She kept every report card, every newspaper clipping. She had a private investigator friend who would send her updates about your life. She knew when you got your first teaching position, when you published your research. She was so proud when you chose to teach, to help others learn and grow." Sam watched as brother and sister gravitated toward each other, sharing the same subtle mannerisms, the same thoughtful pauses between words. Sarah's children, separated by circumstance but united by her love. "We need to leave tonight," Sam said gently. "Karen's arranged a safe house through her contacts at the women's shelter. Somewhere James can't find us while we figure out our next move." Marcus stood, moving to his bedroom. "I need 10 minutes to pack some essentials. My research, my students." "Can wait," Lizzie finished firmly. "Mom spent 20 years protecting you. Let us help her finish what she started." As Marcus gathered his things, Sam's phone buzzed with another message: "Tell Sarah's precious boy that history repeats itself. Like mother, like son, always running." Sam's jaw clenched as he deleted the message. In the kitchen, he heard Lizzie and Marcus talking softly, their voices carrying the same gentle cadence Sarah's had. Despite the danger closing in, something profound was healing here, bridges being built across decades of enforced silence. Marcus emerged with a small duffel bag and a laptop case. "I found something," he said quietly, holding out a worn envelope. "The Parkers gave it to me when I turned 18, but I never opened it. They said it was from my birth mother, that I should save it until I was ready." Sam recognized Sarah's handwriting immediately. The letter was dated just days after she'd left Marcus with his adoptive parents. "My dearest boy. By the time you read this, you'll be a man. I pray you're surrounded by love, safety, and the freedom to become whoever you're meant to be. Every day without you has been an exercise in faith, faith that my choice, though it shattered my heart, gave you the chance at a life unmarred by shadows. Know that you were never unwanted. You were, and always will be, my first miracle. The strength I found in loving you gave me the courage to build a new life, to love again, to create a family that I pray you'll someday know. You are not defined by the circumstances of your birth, or by the darkness I fled to protect you. You are defined by your choices, your compassion, your capacity for love. I will always be watching over you, loving you from whatever distance necessary to keep you safe. Mom. The silence that followed was broken only by quiet tears and the distant sound of Seattle traffic. In that moment, they were no longer strangers connected by Sarah's secrets, but a family bound by her sacrifice and love. A car door slammed outside. Footsteps on the wet pavement. Dawn broke over the safe house in gentle waves of pink and gold, the kind of sunrise Sarah had always loved. Sam sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of his wife's 20-year vigil, photographs, letters, and the USB drive that held the key to their safety. Beside him, Marcus and Lizzie slept fitfully on the worn couch, their features softened in sleep, the family resemblance undeniable. The night's escape from Marcus's apartment had been narrow. James's associate, a private investigator with a grudge against Sarah for exposing his involvement in stalking cases, had been seconds behind them. But Karen's domestic violence advocacy network had moved with practiced efficiency, navigating them through a series of safe locations until they reached this quiet house on the outskirts of the city. She thought of everything, Marcus said softly, stirring awake. He moved to join Sam at the table, picking up one of Sarah's journals. Even after death, she's still protecting us. Sam nodded, remembering the moment they'd plugged in the USB drive. The encryption program had requested a DNA sample, a simple cheek swab from Marcus. The files that unlocked painted a devastating picture: James's continued pattern of violence, the network of enablers he'd built, the families he'd terrorized. Sarah had documented it all, working silently with domestic violence advocates to build a case that could protect not just Marcus, but countless others. The prosecutor called, Sam said quietly, not wanting to wake Lizzie. With this evidence, they can charge James with multiple felonies. His parole has already been revoked. He won't be getting out anytime soon. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he traced his mother's handwriting. All those years, I thought I was unwanted. But she was always there, wasn't she? In the shadows, making sure I was safe, loved, protected. That was Sarah, Sam smiled sadly. She taught our children, all our children, that love isn't just about being present. Sometimes it's about the invisible sacrifices, the quiet choices that keep others safe. Lizzie stirred, joining them at the table. In the gentle morning light, she looked so much like her mother that Sam's heart ached. I found something else in the journals, she said, pulling out a worn envelope. Mom had a plan for this moment too. Inside was a deed to a small house in Vancouver, purchased under an alias Sarah had carefully maintained. The neighboring property belonged to Karen's sister, a retired social worker who'd helped Sarah build her support network. She wanted us to have a fresh start, Lizzie explained, her voice thick with emotion. All of us. Together. Marcus stared at the deed, then at the family he'd never known he had. My research position. I can transfer to UBC. They've been recruiting me for their chemistry department. Tommy and Grace will need time to adjust, Sam acknowledged. But they're resilient, like their mother. And they've always wanted a big brother. A text message lit up Sam's phone, from Karen this time, James is in custody. The evidence is with the prosecutor. You're safe now. Sarah can rest easy. The morning sun streamed through the windows, warming the scattered photographs on the table. In each one, Sarah's love was evident, not just in the moments she'd captured of Marcus's life, but in the careful documentation that would finally bring justice. I keep thinking about what Mom wrote in that last letter, Lizzie said softly. About how protecting family sometimes means making impossible choices. Marcus reached for his sister's hand, then his stepfather's. She made those choices so we wouldn't have to. She carried those secrets so we could be free of them. Sam looked at Sarah's children, the son she'd protected from afar, the daughter who shared her spirit of fierce love, and the two younger ones waiting at home who carried her light in their smiles. The weight of her absence would always be there, but now it was wrapped in understanding, in appreciation for the depth of her courage and love. "Your mother once told me," Sam said, his voice gentle, "that family isn't just about blood or memories. It's about choices, choosing to love, to protect, to forgive. Every day, we make those choices again." Outside, the city was waking up. Somewhere in an evidence room, Sarah's carefully gathered proof was bringing long-delayed justice. In Karen's house, Tommy and Grace were probably waking up, eager to meet the brother they'd just learned about. And here, in this safe house blessed by morning light, Sarah's greatest legacy was taking shape, not in the secrets she'd kept, but in the family she'd protected long enough for them to find each other. Marcus stood, moving to the window. "I'm teaching an evening chemistry class next semester," he said quietly. "At the women's shelter. Helping survivors build new skills, new futures." He turned back to his newfound family. "Mom spent her life protecting others. Maybe it's time for me to continue that work, just in my own way." Lizzie smiled through her tears. "She'd love that." Sam gathered Sarah's journals, her photographs, her carefully preserved evidence of a love that transcended fear and separation. These weren't just records of the past anymore, they were guideposts for the future, reminders that even the deepest wounds could heal, that family could be lost and found and rebuilt. Together, they watched the sunrise paint the sky in Sarah's favorite colors, each lost in thoughts of the woman who'd loved them enough to let them go, to keep them safe, to bring them together again. In the end, her greatest secret hadn't been her past, it had been her unwavering faith that love, given enough time and protection, could heal anything. The morning light filled the room with warmth, promise, and possibility. Just the way Sarah would have wanted it.